and then maybe Hal. I'm not sure.
Yeah, thanks, Tim and Wally. I just wanted to make a comment about Darryl, what he ended up saying about players given permission to fail. We've tried to run our provincial teams that way for a long time, more so on the girls' side. Females tend to have that complex of it's got to be perfect or it's nothing. Carla actually in 2019 with our Canada Winter Games team, one of the principles we played with is fail harder, and we showed a number of videos and talked to the players and did a whole bunch of mental performance on it. The book that I shared with Wally and he sent out to everybody, it's called Inside Out Coaching. It's by Joe Ehrman. And anyways, he makes a couple statements in there that really lead to the comment that Darryl made. In the first one, he says the power that comes from understanding your past in order to coach wholly in the present. And he goes through the first part of the book talking about things that he went through as a kid, from his parents to the coaches that he had, and the way that he was as an athlete when he played in the NFL. And it really, it forced him to do a whole lot of things that weren't good with himself. But what he ends up going to say from that is that self-awareness piece came back to help him when he was writing this book. And they set up an organization, and Wally shared the couple pages that I had sent him just in regards to how they ended up forming their group and what they're doing in the US. And it's pretty cool because it started out in a coffee shop, and I wrote on it when I read it, Sharks, because that's exactly how Wally and Tim started this group. So then he goes on the second part to say, if you're unaware of yourself, means you are unaware of the effect on players, their feelings and reactions. And everything that we've talked about this morning relates to that. If coaches are afraid to try something new or do something different and just stay to the old, they're not going to get to this fox and eagle. They're not going to get to the diamond or the triangle. They're never going to try those sorts of things. And their focus tends to be on the scoreboard at the end. And everything that they do, their reactions, their emotions, end up coming back to the players. And if they're unaware of that, it ends up meaning that they're never going to learn. They're never going to want to attempt new things. Al, like you're saying, you're trying to do with your group, I've seen it happen before many times where coaches that are really creative get eaten alive by the parents because the players don't know positions or they don't know how to do this or they can't break out properly. So the whole thing relates back to philosophically where a coach is as far as how comfortable they are in themselves, what they know of themselves, how they've been brought up, as a coach. And at the end of the day, it's all about, like Wally keeps saying, for the good of the game. And that's the importance, I think, of the messaging that we have here is there is opportunity to change people. It starts with coaching young kids and getting them to believe and see what you're doing. And then you hope that that next group coming through, which is them, will coach a little bit differently, much like Joe was saying he has learned in his life.
Hal, I think you were next if you still have your hand up, or Tom. Maybe you're.
I can jump in for, I love the permission to fail. I've always, not always, but in the last 20 years, tried to create an environment for kids. And I think we talked about this quite a long time ago. A lot of kids play in fear of making mistakes. And if you can eliminate that fear and then encourage them to make a play, I think you're making a lot of progress with kids and their not only their play but their enjoyment of playing. I've always said also, mostly when I was coaching at the high school level, boys, is that the players need to learn to become their own coaches. So that's about being self-aware of not only what their skills are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, but also what they need to do to realize whatever goals that they personally have within the game. And as a coach, we can't direct all kids because we don't know what they all want, and we only are with them, at least in Minnesota, we're only with the high school system. We're with them for 16 weeks out of 52 weeks, and then we get permission to do some stuff with them in the summer, but we're not allowed to contact the players in a coaching relationship in the off seasons. And so it makes it a little harder for those kids. I've also found for the girls that, permission to fail and putting them in an environment that encourages them to, to try harder, try to fail harder. They learn a heck of a lot faster, and they have a lot more fun playing. So that's all. I just wanted to sort of layer up on top of what Darryl had said.
Now, thanks. I don't know if Tom, if you wanted in, I see your hand is down now, but if not, then I think it's Mike, then Darryl.
Yeah, I know. Just real quick. I mean, I think Joe's book, I mean, when I read it too, Barry, I think it was more like you see the little pieces in there. I mean, obviously he was really, if you get to read the book and really see how vulnerable he was in his own right, describing his childhood and, kind of his failures, going in. It was funny. Like I had mentioned earlier on the call that I was working with Stefan Matteau on an outreach he's doing. And he experienced the same thing. Like a person, like you think about this guy, you look at this monster of a human being and, he couldn't even, he got made fun of, he was 14 years old because he was bigger than everyone else. And, he's always guy looking down. He said he'd walk through the hallways, looking down the ground, never had any self-confidence. But then, you found those coaches. And I think Joe was really one of the first ones, that I read or, that I got to follow because, I tend not to, there's not a lot of hockey people out there. But, from a football perspective, I mean, his ability to kind of open up and be that first coach to describe like how he would, that transformational coaching of, loving your players first and showing how much you care really was so resonating. So I mean, I think it's a great read by anybody. And, having the opportunity to kind of see what his background is and then going into where he's at. And I think that's to Al's point too, like parents, they have to see that. They have to see that like you're just trying to have the kids have a great experience and lots of fun. I think that's my battle is getting the parents to say, well, why don't you ask your kid if they like being a Fox or an Eagle? Like, I know you don't understand it, but why don't you see if they love it, right? Because they do. And I think that's where that conversation has to come into play more and more. But it was a great recommendation, Barry. And I think, again, if you haven't read that book, I think everybody should read it for sure.
Darryl, go ahead.
Yeah, just going back to the the permissions. What I think gets lost in permission is protection. And we can tell the players that, we want them to fail or fail forward or fail harder or whatever it is. And that we want them to be trying to do different things, or we have coaches who are in organizations who are also trying to, do something a little different. They're trying to, enhance the player's hockey sense. So they do things a little differently. And then to Tom's point, a lot of those coaches do get eaten up and they are forced to change because there just isn't enough protection in place. And I think a larger conversation on permission has to be, the permission is one part of it, but what are we doing to protect the environment? Either protect the environment from the coach, where the coach has an opportunity to kind of get a fair opportunity to implement what he's trying to do. Protect the players who are trying to do something and maybe the failure rate just gets up just a little uncomfortably high at times. And then, people get a little funny and nervous, and then the protection kind of falls apart. So I don't know who the enemy is. Sometimes the enemy comes in different places or comes from different, sometimes it's the parents. Sometimes it's not the parents. Sometimes it's just the league that you're in. Like you say, you're in the wrong league. So you're competitive. The competitive situation doesn't afford itself very much opportunity to get into too many things that are, where failure is celebrated. So I think that as part of the discussion of permissions, you also have to open a discussion on how are we going to protect this environment and understand who the threats are to the environment, and then educate those threats as to what it is you're trying to do, why, what the anticipated result is. See if you can move the goalpost a little bit further down the track to give whomever it is that you're trying to afford this opportunity, give them a little bit more breathing space to tilt the failure number up a little bit, or start building confidence in it. So I think that that's an important point that often gets missed is, yes, we want players to create an environment for permission to fail. Yes. But how are we protecting that environment? I think it's an important discussion.
Yeah, thanks for that, Darryl. Like that is a very difficult and interesting question, and that basically sort of progressive coaches or coaches trying to do something radical in parents' minds and in maybe in coaching associations' minds, and granting that permission to fail. How do we protect them? Like, really important question without an easy answer, I would guess. I wanted to touch back, and maybe because I had another thought in sort of like, Darryl, your concept of progressing from the dogs, foxes, and eagles to maybe the shapes and triangles. I was thinking, okay, the dog is on the puck, and the foxes, their role is to form and provide that triangle of support, whether they've got the puck or whether they're defending. And my thought came to my brain that if you're at all familiar with prairie dogs, gophers, Hal will be in Minnesota, gophers, but they always have a backdoor entrance or exit from their underground home. So they've got 2 ways to escape. But the foxes have to be smart, and they are smart, and they know that you don't want 2 foxes guarding one entrance. You have to have 1 fox guarding each of those exits. So there's your triangle. The dog is on the gopher, and the foxes are protecting each entrance or exit to the escape route. So I'm going back to coach U10s now and U8s, I think. Always scared the crap out of me before. Anyway, go ahead, Darryl.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on that. So again, you're talking about how you're communicating and evolving from one level of communication that describes a certain action and reaction and anticipation, and you're trying to speak to the player in terms in which they can understand. So you use creative analogies like the ones that we're talking about. Those are phenomenal. And then now you get to them when they're a little older, and maybe that analogy is not as, it doesn't hit home as hard. Now you go into something else. So whether it's triangles or shapes or something, it does the same thing. And it describes similar actions, reactions, and anticipations, but it does it from a different way. And I think evolving that is really important. So as part of this discussion, I'll talk to you a little bit about things that are in my life right now that I'm going through. I'd be curious on all of your thoughts. So I want to take you to a retrieval. So puck, play goes in, the defenseman's going back, and he's on a retrieval. And we talk about all the footwork that goes along with that. We talk about, making sure that you have a pre-touch position. So before the puck even gets dumped in, what's your line, getting on a line. We do all the technical stuff. But at the end of the day, when the puck goes back and you're running back to go get it, there's a time in which the ice is shrinking and your vision for what's going on is also shrinking. So that every step you take, the ice and what you see gets smaller and smaller. So of course you use your shoulder checks to try to expand your vision, but you look over your shoulder, you take 2 steps. Well, the environment behind you just changed again. So the information you collected in the time in which you took a shoulder check, when you went turned your head to relocate the puck, take further steps to go where you're going. When you look over your shoulder, well, now that forechecker, he changed shoulders on you. Now he's on the other shoulder. The other guy maybe made a line change, or the guy who's supposed to be supporting you, he fell. All of a sudden, like the environment is changing. And so the read becomes very different, very fluid. So the question becomes, how can I expand the vision, but yet be nimble? So the player, when they take their first shoulder check and they look, and now they go back, they've collected some information. So of course I'm asking them, what information are you collecting? In my experience, most players, they either see the support or they see the pressure, but very, very few of them see both. Most of them, they can only see that guy that's all over them on the thing, but they have no idea what are coming in the layers behind. So how do you expand that vision? So I'm wondering, as you guys are talking, is there a way to come at it from some of these analogy perspectives, which are very effective at all in how you depending on how you phrase it. Of course, using a bunny versus a rabbit is a very different term depending on the age group. But it's very interesting. I think this is the role of the coach. As the players going back, are with as much information as you can. Information is very interesting. So I think on these retrievals, kind of my world right now. Trying to understand it at a level which I can be a better coach. Curious, anybody done any work on expanding vision, getting players to react, changing environments, ultimately what communication you've used that allows them to make better decisions when they get the puck to facilitate exits.
Go ahead, Wally.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in, I don't know if this is totally in line, but watching hockey today at the highest level compared to my day, playing 5-on-5 and then becoming special teams back in my day. And the analogy was in power play, you have to play chess, not checkers. Well, I think today, Darryl, the game is you got to play 5-on-5. You got to play chess. It's not as much the checkers. So the expansion of the vision to be more aware of the surroundings and learning to cope with it without fear of failing in those situations. Hey, it's true at any level. The highest, they suffer pain just like the kids do. It's how the situation is addressed and approached. So permission to fail is huge. Thanks very much. Anything else to add to that, Darryl?
No, like I said, I for me, this is a real thing. Like it's a lot of times the defenders going back, there's a speed differential disadvantage because the real threat was ahead of them. And then now the puck is getting dumped, not from the original guy that's the furthest up the line. It's like F2 or F3 is actually the one, or the D. And so you've gapped to the wrong player who's not going to necessarily be the threat. Threat's actually coming from behind that. So you're at a speed differential disadvantage. So when you go back, there's just a lot of problems. And so when you do go back, the expectations you're going to solve the problem. And the best people in the world are doing that on a very consistent basis. But a lot of it has to do with the way in which they're able to deal with changing environment. Because the thing that you look over your shoulder and you see that environment is going to change. And so being able to adapt and adjust. And I was just curious, like to Wally's point, I'm dealing with it at this level, but and everyone is dealing with it at that level because it's a very difficult thing. But it's the same problem for a 10-year-old going back because the speed differential might not be actual like positioning. It could be actual speed. The kid that's coming at you is, he's the same age as you, but maturity wise is 2 years older and he actually has power. And now the speed coming at you is just so much. It's more than you've ever had to deal with before. So these are real problems that happen to all players at all age groups. That's why I was curious to hear if anybody had anything that they had done as it related to language or as it related to these things like that you're talking about, as it relates specifically to, you know, organizing an exit, knowing that for the most part, most players see either the support or the pressure, and that just a small percentage of people actually see both and are able to make decisions based on both. It's a real challenge. So I was just curious if anybody had done any work in that regard, because I'm open for any and all ideas at the moment because I'm deep in this type of study. This is the type of thing that keeps me up at night. And so I could use a good night's sleep if someone could help me with something that they've done that could lead me down a different perspective than I've been chasing so far. This seems like a great place to pose the question.
Darryl, my thought as you were talking about that, and it's really a pretty obvious one, I guess. But my thought is in terms of expanding the vision, because I went back for a lot of pucks in my day. The best vision expander for me would be the goalie, my partner, and the closest forward talking to me. We had, and Terry, who's on now, Terry Johnson, we always used to talk about making your ears your eyes. But so that verbal communication is critical, and I think we all know that. But that is one of the biggest pieces for me in terms of expanding that defenseman, in this specific example, expanding that defenseman's vision of how things are changing behind him would be, and really tying to, Tarasov's concept that the puck carrier depends on the four other players in high-level intelligent hockey. It's not the puck carrier's responsibility to decide what to do. It's really that decision is dependent on the other four players. So the way they can help out is to communicate in that situation. And then right after I had that thought, I go back to the foxes and the dogs. So if the dog is obviously the D going back for the puck, the two closest support players are the foxes. And so now I was thinking, so maybe we need to change the fox analogy and make them coyotes, because coyotes often, I think, or maybe wolves hunt in packs, and I don't know if foxes or coyotes do, but the two foxes behind the dog would be smart enough to communicate with each other and with the dog and work together. And so you might not want to use that concept with your NHL defenseman. They may laugh you out of the rink, but the communication is the big piece there for me.
I got a question here. And Tim, I'm just going back to simplicity and allowing the kids to think freely. And as you move up the ladder, you can expand your awareness. And I know at Darryl's level, the biggest thing I've learned from Darryl was a session he did years ago with Kane and a number of others, viewing video and Kane describing what he was thinking. They all became more aware of, you can think more, there are more things happening. They expanded their ability to think. Al, I see your hands up, and I'm thinking in the back of my mind, the ability to think and feel free to think starts at your level. So Al, can you comment?
Yeah, I 100% agree. It definitely starts at our level. It starts like from U6, I would say, when you first get them. But I think that's a really interesting point that Darryl made about having some kind of an analogy to be able to kind of relate, feeling the pressure and being able to see their options, support options. So I'm going to play with that because that's something that we've been kind of working on a lot, but I haven't really come up with an analogy for it. I think the first step in trying to expand their vision is how we teach stick handling with little kids. Because, you know, a lot of times you'll see folks that are working on puck handling and that doing things where, like, if you're trying to do that with cones or whatever, you're like, how are you encouraging the kids to keep their head up, right? So we did an awful lot of work, especially early on in the season, with kids on puck handling with their head up. I know with my little guy at home, like that's 100% what we focus on when we're playing at home. You know, with the stick handling is like, how can we design a game so that it forces him to have his head up and not look at the ground, right? And so much of what kids, like, especially if they're trying to, you know, get drills online or they're watching Instagram or YouTube, it's like the stuff that they're seeing is people doing things with cones or pucks or whatever, and they're looking down, right? So that's step number one. What we've done in this area is like starting monkey in the middle type games from a retrieval. So that somebody's got to go back and get the puck. They got to check their shoulder to be able to see where the monkey in the middle is coming from, and then be able to make a pass to one of their support players. So I'm going to play around a lot with that, Darryl, because that's an area where we need to work on. Our kids see pressure really good, but being able to pick up the support option from a retrieval is a little bit more difficult for them. And I kind of have a funny story about that too, you know, and it kind of relates back to the whole permission to fail thing. So I have a couple of players, one in particular who's 9, who he retrieves the puck really well, shoulder checks, sees the pressure, and he loves to bait the pressure in and then try to make a move. A lot of times he'll do that near our net. So he's really dangerous, and, you know, myself and the coaches, when we see him going back with the puck, if there's anybody close, you know, we always kind of looking at each other like, don't do it, under our breath. And, you know, because most of the time he's going to try and make a move and go right out in front of the net, right? But he beats the guy 9 times out of 10. And we've been talking all year about, you know, that being risky, right? Like, not don't do it, but like that's a risky play, right? And he looked at me the other day. We were in a playoff game. It was like a 4-4 tie, and he looked at me. He's like, "Well, that's a risk I'm willing to take." You know, and he left. You know, he ended up rushing the puck halfway down the ice, made a nice pass. So you gonna argue with him? You know. Okay, but that was a funny one. Yeah, happens to be my son. He's like, "Dad, that's a risk I'm willing to take."
Tom Malloy.
Yeah, we dealt with that kind of stuff all the time, like RD going back. And one of the things that Terry tried to teach them is get that puck as quickly as you can. Because a lot of them, they think they're ahead, and then they'll start, you know, going really slow. And then, of course, the checker gets on them more closely. And so that's the first principle, you know, besides looking around and all the things Tim said with the communication. The other thing one thing that Yursinoff used to say, he wanted to be going back with a mindset that they're going to beat the first player. So, you know, that gets them getting there quicker, you know, doing some hard fakes, tight turns, this kind of stuff, because it totally changes if you can get your toe caps up ice. But then, you know, if someone's right on you with a stick on you, you're going hard, and that will set up the reverse and all this sort of thing. So the mindset of, because I know with our players, I lost most of my top 3 D weren't there anymore. And the next ones would just panic rim the puck all the time. And we're trying to convince them that we'd much rather make them a mistake of commission than omission. Because just shooting the puck away from everybody, you know, it's a lot better to be there and someone checks you, at least you're close to the puck. But trying to beat that first player, I think, really changes how their success on the breakouts.
Yeah, I think I was really happy that Tim started the discussion on the communication of other people, because when we talk about hockey sense, and this is where I wanted to go with this part of this discussion, is the hockey sense and improving the hockey sense. We often view hockey sense from the viewpoint of just one player, and I think that Tim's description of how important the other players are in being able to direct and to help gather or provide information that that player can then gather, and then they can help them make a better decision. They have better information, but that they're not charged with collecting all the information and on their own. I think that's an important aspect that could be applied in a variety of areas. I chose, retrievals as the example because I felt like it was an easy way to get that point to come up. But now that it's out there, I think that it's a really important piece as it relates to hockey sense and improving hockey sense of all the players, is to get them to understand their responsibility in that everyone is responsible for providing information, talking to them, presenting themselves a certain way, etc. Like even past presentation, how do you present yourself in a way non-verbally that tells the person I want the puck, or I feel like I'm in a good position. Like there's so many things there that are relatively easy to teach, but you got to be very consistent with it, and it can make a massive difference. So Tim, thank you for a really good explanation of exactly what that actually is. And then Tom furthering that up about providing players with the actual objective. What are you trying to do? Well, you're going back for the puck. Well, we need you to beat F1. That's your number one goal. Don't worry about anything else. Get there first, beat F1. We'll figure it out. We'll figure out the rest of it afterwards. That is also an incredibly powerful tool as it relates to hockey sense. What is it you're exactly trying to do? Hockey sense, I think, is driven a lot by purpose. Players understanding the purpose of the play, the objective of what you're trying to get out of it, and then like I said, collecting the information and deciphering the information that best allows you to execute that purpose. I think those two things that you guys brought up, I think, are really important, and it can be used at all levels. So I got to jump off now, but I was really happy that we were able to get through that because I think those are important pieces to continue to discuss.